Thank you. Kim and John have struck at the heart of the issues relating to the bill that we have been asked to consider. But I think that in order to round out the understanding by the public as to what we are up against, let us consider that at the ministerial statement on Friday, there was the reference to the consultant's report that had been completed in order to ensure that this legislation could be drafted and come forward. The minister was asked how much has been spent on the consultant's report, to which he responded over $600,000. For $600,000, one would have assumed that the report would have been tabled along with the legislation, or certainly that the general public would have had the opportunity to hear the recommendations by the consultants, to be able to understand what was intended and how those consultants' recommendations could have led to the legislation that has been drafted. But none of that has happened. But I bring your minds back to the gaming bill. You will recall earlier in the year when we had the opportunity to debate the gaming bill, there were consultants who were hired. There was a report that was drafted. All of the stakeholders had the opportunity to engage with and to interact with the consultants with the questions that were necessary in order to formulate a reasonable and meaningful opinion for the people of Bermuda. None of that has happened in this instance, and that gives us grave cause for concern. What also gives us cause to wonder with respect to why this legislation would have been tabled at 2 minutes to midnight, if I use the analogy by the Deputy Premier, when she talked about the gaming bill having been tabled at 10 minutes to midnight in the administration of the Premier. We are now tabling at 2 minutes to midnight on perhaps the eve and maybe the last appearance by the Premier in Parliament. A bill that will have long-term repercussions. A bill that has not been given the depth of overview and oversight that one would expect when reform is at the heart of what the government is attempting to do. We need to ensure that all hands are on deck. It is our understanding that a significant number of members of Parliament are not likely to be in the chamber, having been required to be absent on government business through the Commonwealth Parliamentary Association. Why the rush? Are we looking at the clandestine type of approach to things that we had when the Premier thought that with the absence of certain people, his last major controversial bill might be able to be pushed through the House? Is this what we deem to be good government? I would just ask the people of Bermuda to consider. We know that the corporation have recommended and have implemented reforms based on the pressures, and absolutely the right thing to do. The voting franchise is something that has been looked at. Why don't we permit, as we have done in other instances, certainly in the Media Council bill, permit the system to churn through and to determine how the recommendations and changes are impacting the changes that are needed, and then come down with the sledgehammer, if such is necessary, at the end of the process, as opposed to forcing things through at the front end. We are tremendously concerned about the approach, and we certainly know that in this case it appears as though the means is there to justify the end. And I'm not sure that the means that are being employed in this instance are for the better good of Bermuda, and I think that every member of the public ought to consider that they are being railroaded into a position, and I don't believe that that bodes well for us as a community.